Michael and I are doing in the run up to the publication of Taking Testing Seriously is we're reading different sections of the book and discussing them. And it occurs to me that might be fun to do with you, Karen Johnson, my colleague and contributor of a chapter two, Taking Testing Seriously. So, what I'm going to do is read to you a paragraph from the book, from the strategy chapter, and I want to get your reaction to it. This is a section about normality, and the title of this section is "Welcome to Your New Normal." Here we go. In RST, it's acceptable to use the word normal. It's typical to hear it in discussions about users and product behavior, where it naturally emerges from the process of contrasting and comparing different possibilities. It can be a pleasing idea that seems easily grasped, but beware, it's an ambiguous and fraught concept as well. For us as RST practitioners, the standard way of approaching normality in test strategy is to unpack its semantics. Now, planted throughout the preceding paragraph are 7 different senses of the word normal. And that's the big point we want to make in this section about normality, is that there are different senses of what normality means. And it's important for us testers to be aware of those and to make use of those different senses of the word normal. So I'm wondering, do you see that there are different senses of the word normal? And if so, what senses do you use in that term?
I'm like so sorry, but I have a hard time with the word normal. I
Why?
just I've just had a personal life and a professional life with a lot of variety, and I'm not sure I know what normal is. And I think normal, my first reaction to the word is that normal is a very subjective word, and that I become quietly curious what somebody thinks normal is. And I ask myself, like, who are they and where are they relative to the project? And like normal.
Sounds like you totally agree with Michael and I that there are different senses of the word normal. What I'm interested in is what are those senses?
Well, I think those senses come from where people have been and what they think normal is, right? So I might work with somebody in a product who's talking to ex customers, and they start to get a sense of like what normal is for that customer. Well, are
So
they
give me an
talking to
example.
other examples get to be really tricky, right? Because I
Any
want
example.
um oh, okay. I'll go backwards just so I can safely be in a domain that maybe is relevant to a lot of people. And again, I'm not talking about any software at the current point. So I famously worked at Peapod ages ago, and I think that's one of those things like groceries, food. People love food, right? So we can talk about food. And we would talk, I guess, back in the day about like what a normal shopping cart was, or like what a normal order might be. And
Okay.
I knew in that context that when people said that, they meant an average size order. I don't know what normal is. Normal,
What does average mean?
I don't remember what the stats were like, but there would have been like an average shopping cart size,
I
right?
guess I'm asking what literally what does the word average mean as you are using it in that sense?
In that sentence, it would have been, what is the price point of an average cart as an indicator of how big was this order? And so an order of a certain dollar amount, I don't remember numbers now, but would be
Right.
considered like large. Oh, that's a large order, like
Right.
enough to cause people to be like, oh,
Okay, so you just used the word average in your definition of the word average. So I'm really trying to understand what do you mean by the word average?
in that context, it would be, let's use this carefully here, an order that wouldn't be too small and not too large that would fit within a range of what people would expect or have experienced having seen.
Those are
Something that would slip sort of under the radar as normal.
Hey, now, so I see why you have a problem with this because you are using different definitions of normal in your one definition that I asked you for. You are not restricting yourself to one definition. You're using several things that you're throwing in there. I thought you were going to tell me that, James, by average, I'm talking about the mathematical definition of average. What that is it's a measure of central tendency in statistics. It's called central tendency, and it is calculated by adding up the totals of all of the shopping carts that have ever been used before with our product, and then you divide by the number of shopping carts, and you get the average number of items if that's what you're adding up, or you get the average cost if that's it's a total divided by a number of
So I'm
set.
going to counter to that, that mathematically, of course, what you're saying is true. I'm just going to say that when people use the term average or normal, they're not usually referencing math. They're referencing what they have deduced to be a no, like what they would consider a normal or an average.
I've just talked about one definition that comes into normality. There are others. My point is, we can identify those others.
Okay.
Have to shrug and say, well, there's more than one, so there's nothing to talk about. We can't say anything. We can say a lot of things about normality. We can tease apart these different elements. So you said in your talk about what's average, it seemed to me that you alluded to at least two ideas, probably more, um, but at least two. And that what I heard was what is the typical size of a shopping cart, and that's a statistical idea. That's average. And then there is the standard size.
Mm,
So standard might not be typical. Standard is something that is seen as a benchmark of some kind, whether or not it's a typical thing. So here's an example. When you're browsing, you can browse in your browser in incognito mode, right? But incognito mode is not the default mode.
true.
Default mode, which you could call the standard mode of browsing, is not incognito. So we can say that's a standard mode of browsing, and no one would bat an eyelid. Like, yeah, that's the default, that's the standard. But I am not saying that most people use that mode. Maybe they do. Maybe most people do use that mode. But if 90% of people were browsing in incognito mode, we would still say that the default or standard mode of browsing would be not incognito mode. It wouldn't be typical, but it would be standard.
Mm,
Similarly, and this might even be better, there's an HTML standard, but most websites have non-standard HTML, and browsers don't care. Browsers are going to show it you correct or pretty good view of that, even if there are little syntax errors in your HTML,
yeah. Oh,
maybe non-standard HTML, but it would be very typical HTML because it's very typical for pages not to follow standard HTML practice. So there's a difference between normal as standard and normal as typical. Here's another example. A speed limit is a standard, but it is not normal, at least in the United States, for people to go exactly the speed limit. They tend
That's
to go
a
5 miles
great
an hour
example.
at least over the speed limit. That is typical. And police don't even stop you if you're going 5 miles an hour over the
Right.
speed limit because it's considered
The
normal.
magic number is 7. You're supposed to be able to be within 7 miles,
There you
give
go.
right.
So there's a difference between standard and typical, and we can easily see this in lots of different walks of life. So that's at least two different ideas of what normality is, and we can talk about normality with an awareness that there are different ways to think about normality. And I think that that's important to be able to do because people will use the word normal.
Yeah, I want to ask the why question, right? So I know historically that you feel strongly that a tester should be able to be very articulate about what they're doing and why they're doing
Yeah.
something. Is that is that why the pause on the word normal? Like why are we pausing on this? I mean, there's a lot of thought given
Because
to
lots of people use the word normal.
words we throw around very lazy without really a lot of thinking.
Lots of people use the word normal. And so we've got to be able to unpack that and find out what they're really talking about.
Hmm,
They may actually be talking simultaneously about different kinds of normality, all of which are important.
it's possible.
And so whenever you
Apparently, I just did
hey,
it. You know,
whenever you say oh, that's normal, you don't stop someone and go, how dare you use the word normal because it can mean so many different things.
sure.
What we do is we decide what they probably uh, meant, and
But what if what we think they meant isn't what they did mean, and so we have a gap between what they said and what I think they said?
that's normal. You
It,
walked into that.
it,
Okay, so um, well, what if then we have some debugging to do, or we need to be wary of how this word can fool us. So it I just call these danger words. They're words that I don't necessarily won't use because I don't think the word normal is toxic. There are some words that I think are toxic that they slowly kill you if you use them, like cigarette smoke does.
mm,
But there are other words that are they're they're risky and you have to be they're like a chainsaw. They're useful, but they can also cut you pretty badly if you aren't careful with them. So that's why Michael and I decided that we would try to unpack 7 different meanings of the word normal that we see.
that's a lot. That's
Yeah,
a
yeah. So,
lot for one word.
right. And so there are 2 different meanings of normal that I was using commonly and was aware that I was using was the normative idea of normal, which means what is allowed, what is supposed to happen. And such that when someone says that's not normal, they mean not that it's unusual, they mean that it's wrong. That's not normal. That noise that my car is making, uh,
Mm,
meaning I think something's wrong with my car. Not,
that's
oh, interesting, my car's doing something new and I'm learning about it today. This is not the sense of that.
not the thing. Yeah.
It's more like
Mm,
I have to take the car in for repair because this is not normal. And of course, that you can hear that in people's voices when they go, some politician says something and they go, "Well, that's just not normal for a person to say that." They're commenting on how
right. They're
bad
telling you it's not right. Yeah.
it's not right. So I,
What are the
I
7? I need to know. What are the 7? I'm
Michael and I
confused.
have mapped these to the word peanuts. So I'll
I
read
do.
them off to you. Okay.
Yeah, please.
P stands for pleasing. Sometimes when people say normal, it means that which pleases me. I'm happy with this, therefore I will call it normal. And
Hmm.
this is one of the reasons why some people like you and me are concerned about the word normal because it can be used to kind of subtly bully people. Like it's
The
anything that I
loaded
like
word.
is normal and anything I don't like is not normal. So, all right. So P stands for pleasing. E stands for easy. Sometimes when a developer says, can you just give it normal inputs? What they mean is any input that my program will easily be able to handle is normal.
Right.
I
Right.
design
Everything else, by the way, is an edge case because you're doing weird things that I'm not okay with.
edge case is whatever my program can't handle is by
Right. It's
definition
an
an
edge
edge
case.
case. Right. So we have pleasing versus disturbing, easy versus stressful, acceptable. Oh, actually, I keep saying allowed, but we actually wrote it as acceptable versus disallowed. Allowed was an earlier version of. I was doing this by memory instead of looking at my book. Acceptable was allowed was an earlier version of the list. Acceptable versus disallowed. This is acceptable. Um, then there's natural versus contrived. Have
Um,
you ever done a test and then you show the result to the developer and they go, well, but you just made that up.
mhm.
A real user wouldn't do that.
Nobody's ever gonna. Yes, I hear this very often.
You intentionally did put that input in a weird way so it would mess up my program. It's not what a
It's not
normal
normal.
person would do.
Yes, I
So
hear this.
sometimes when people say abnormal, they mean it's not naturalistic. It's not something that would occur in nature amongst users who are of good intention and good faith. So natural versus contrived is as another dimension. And then there's you. You stands for us versus them. And us versus them actually applies to all the other ones. Us versus them reminds us that any notion of normality pertains to someone's point of view. So what's normal for me may not be normal for someone else. What's normal for them might not be normal for me. So it reminds us to, it's a good idea, generally speaking, to consciously work out what are the different groups out there that I ought to be aware of, the different value groups. And amongst those are going to be malicious hackers. You know, they're not like us. They don't care about the same things we care about, but that doesn't mean I can ignore them.
It's also a way to create distance. I've done this on data entry fields if I don't find validation around it, right? Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, okay, so I can put in drop table command. Well, no, I mean and then you hear like other people might do that. It's a way of creating distance.
That's absolutely right. That's the way it is. In fact, the whole concept of normality is a way to create distance between things you don't like or fear or don't want to deal with. So
So
I
pull me back and tell me what T and S are though, because we
okay.
so
T is
off.
typical versus unusual.
Okay.
So we were talking about, and then the S is standard versus special.
Those are
So
tricky.
normal can mean standard, normal can mean typical, normal can mean whatever we like or whatever is about us. Normal can mean natural, acceptable, easy, pleasing. All of these overlap in some way or another because, after all, um, what's easy for the software might also be pleasing for the developer to have you use on their software. But what's really interesting are when there's contradictions.
Hmm.
But what about something that is contrived but very typical? Contrived input that is very typical. I'll give you an example. Password managers. What password managers do, that many people use password managers, but what they do is they pretend to be a user and they pump data into that field, the password field, to fill in the username and password.
Right.
This is contrived. It's not natural typing, but it's very typical. Lots of people use it.
True.
But it's also not standard in the sense that it's not support for it isn't built into the browser. It's sort of tacked on.
Great. This is true. This is a good example.
Um, on the other hand, it's easy for software to handle it. It's not stressful. So in that sense, it's normal. It's pleasing to security professionals that we're using this.
It
Uh,
would be standard for software to be able to handle it.
yeah, it's disturbing for hackers that want to eavesdrop on on our security that we're using these. So what's kind of fun is brainstorming things that are normal in one sense and not normal in another sense, and then asking yourself, is this important for me to test? Is the because see, our point is that a big part of testing is to patrol the edges of normality. And and you where we want to know the behavior of software when it is out in the boondocks, when it starts getting challenging in different ways.
So is that the
Yes or
call of this word so that like if you're in your workplace, you're doing testing and somebody, maybe somebody in product says, well, this is what a normal user does. It is the hope that the book would get a tester to realize like that's a word that I need to pay attention to and I
no?
need to figure out like what's really going on here.
Exactly. So it's really a validation of what you said at the very beginning. I wanted to talk about normality, and you said, "Oh, I have a problem with normality." Exactly, because you're a tester.
It's a tricky word.
You do
And
need to have a problem with the word normality, and the solution or a solution to the problem is to unpack its semantics
yeah,
and explore its ins and outs.
it's a word that lets you stick things under the rug. And so I guess you're trying to call it out so that when you're in a dialogue and you hear the word,
I want to know what the rugs are.
yeah,
I have to check under those rugs, so I need to know where are these rugs.
it sounds like you both of you felt strongly about the word normal. So that's
Yeah, yeah. We think it's an okay word. We think it's important to know its dynamics in order to respond to how it's used. And so you see, when you first were describing what you meant by normal, I was picking that apart based on this model in my head of the seven things. So I'm looking for,
which
is there
version?
more than
Which
one way that
version?
you're using the word
Yeah.
average? And it seemed to me there was, that you weren't just talking about the mathematical definition of average. That's the value of this concept to me, is it lets me be sensitive
It's
to
a good thing.
certain nuances that I wasn't as sensitive to before I had this big argument with Michael Bolton about.
For a word that comes up as often as it does in our field,
Yeah,
it's worth the pause point. I'm
that's what
looking at it up on the screen. You've got like four paragraphs, maybe five. It's worth the pause point. The word comes up a lot, and there's a lot that can be being said.
well, thanks for letting me yell at you. I know that's what it's going to sound like to a lot of people.
Like whatever, you.
Thanks for letting me argue with you with my scratchy interrupting voice.
No, you did.
Karen,
Thank
uh,
you.
it was
You
a
always get me to come.
pleasure for me, and I hope people will check out our book.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.